senior fellow with Freedom Works. He's a PhD, so you could call him Dr. Borelli if you want. Dr. Borelli is an authority on crony capitalism, and he's a leading critic of CEOs who seek profits from the growth of government. Dr. Borelli is a frequent guest on numerous television programs, including Fox News Channel, The O'Reilly Factor, Fox Business, Barney and Company, etc. He serves as a science fellow. He has served as a science fellow for the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Science, Space, and Technology during the 100th Congress, and he received his Bachelor of Science in Microbiology from Michigan State University and his Master of Science and PhD in Biochemistry from New York Medical College. So, Tom.
Well, thanks so much for inviting us to speak tonight at the Caesar Rodney Institute and Faith and Freedom Coalition. We're really excited to be here. We traveled down from New York, short trip for us lately these days. And I really want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time of your busy schedules to share some thoughts with us. And we understand this is a special opportunity for us because most of the time Deneen and I speak to people who already agree with us politically. Quite frankly, a lot of the Tea Party groups. And we're there mostly to rally, to excite people so that they can go further. Tonight we actually have, I think, a bigger opportunity. An opportunity to reach new people with their ideas. And together, with the power in this room, we can make a difference. I absolutely know that. Because what we've learned with the Tea Party, it takes people and action. What we're trying to do is break the monopolies, whether it's the teachers union, whether it's the crony capitalism, whatever it is, they need to hear from we the people. And we can do that. And they're used to hearing from the Tea Party, and they're kind of frightened of the Tea Party. But my God, would they be frightened with this group of people. Let me tell you, Deneen and I often go to shareholder meetings where we directly challenge CEOs for their crony capitalism. Far too often, it's only the two of us. And they're a little bit afraid of me. They're really afraid of me. Just imagine what we could do. Deneen and I have found ourselves really in the front lines of today's political battles. And it's not something that I ever thought I would do, and I certainly know it's something that Deneen never thought she would do. Somehow, we've been pushed or nudged, as I say, from the man above, to go in this direction. Our motivations are very clear. We just want to keep America the exceptional country that it is, so that everyone has an opportunity to succeed. We want you to succeed, we want your children to succeed, and we want your grandchildren to succeed. We want that level playing field. And frankly and frighteningly, we don't see it as too much of a level playing field because really of a group of special interests. And a little bit about my background. I grew up in an urban environment, Mount Vernon, New York. In Avery, from New Rochelle. Mount Vernon, New York is an urban community. I went to high school in the Bronx. My father was a World War II veteran, Union Postal Service worker. My mother was a high school cafeteria worker. My father was a Union Democrat. My mother was a Republican, a Union Republican. The story goes that my mother's side of the family became Republican because in the early years, Italians were discriminated against. And I believe it was Teddy Roosevelt who was the police commissioner in New York City, and he happened to be kind to Italians, so that represents that. But in any event, I wasn't raised in a political family. I lived in a rent-controlled apartment. All steps, I believe it was 66 steps from the bottom to the top to the fourth floor. Two-bedroom apartment. I've worked my entire life. When grammar school, I was a paper boy. High school, I was worked in the cash register. Actually, when you actually had to press the buttons and actually count out change, and I hated that job because you're on your feet, and every Saturday you could just look, and the line would not stop. I had numerous jobs during college. You name them, I did them. I was a private detective. I actually worked as a dog catcher, many jobs, you know. I hated cleaning kennels in the 100-degree weather. Let me tell you, you learn how to breathe through your mouth and not through your nose. But I've always valued the dignity of being on your own and making money. That was a very liberating experience, actually working and making money, and you know, whatever the rate was, it was your own dignity. And I also remember the humbling experience of not having a job, of wanting to work and not being able to. I really didn't like that. I found that humbling. I worked hard through college, got a college degree, a couple advanced degrees, and I worked for a major corporation and I traveled the world. Despite all the exposures to corporate life, I never really abandoned my blue-collar roots. You know, it's kind of ironic that now I'm a Tea Party activist. I guess that's what I'd be calling myself. Can't say the word political because I don't see things through a party prism. I see things through principles. And you know, I was raised, you know, I became a scientist, so I look at the data and then I develop my conclusion. I don't start with my conclusion and know where I'm going. I mean, it's not the way you're wired to think, at least. Well, I had a life-changing event. While working as a scientist in General Foods, which I wanted to be a scientist, the company wanted me to go to Washington, D.C. one year to work as a congressional staffer, as a fellowship program. It was kind of an odd choice for me. I did make the choice, they encouraged me, because I had absolutely no interest in politics at all. I went to science. I had no interest in public speaking, no interest in writing, none of that stuff. I wanted to just play with test tubes. But that was a major change in my life because I really went to the lab of Congress. And I was thrown into working for Congress, and I worked for the Democratic majority in the House Science Committee. Where else would you expect a scientist to go, right? I worked for the House Science Committee, but that experience changed my life because I saw things that actually frightened me. I saw people who really didn't understand issues making huge decisions that would affect all of us. And I said, gee, I can go back and play with test tubes and maybe do something great, or maybe I can affect, you know, these big policies and affect many more people. You know, that was one of the experience really changed my life. And you know, I was told, you know, really as you grow in life, there are really two sets of people, two groups of people. You know, the ones that come from humble beginnings, make it wealthy, and try to bury those experiences and run away with it, hide from it, and become an elite. And then there's the other group of people who work their way through life the hard way and want to make sure that the doors of opportunity are open for everyone. They're not ashamed of where they come from. In fact, they want to guarantee that they have one. If I probably to put it together, I put myself in the second group, where I want to keep, you know, the doors of opportunity, you know, open for everyone. If I can do it, I think anyone can do it. It just takes hard work and commitment. And, you know, quite frankly, I've always been uncomfortable with the elites. You know, the kind of people who know better than you and who will construct a world where you don't have choices. Because they're smarter than you. Those people actually bother me. And I'm really appalled, that's an understatement, I'm really appalled by, you know, the fact that some of them will conspire and work to take advantage of those who are less fortunate. That actually makes me angry. And that's what drives us to what we're doing every day. So, you know, my diversity of experience is everything from being a scientist, to being in politics, to being in business, led me to a world of fighting crony capitalism. Because I've kind of seen it, I've experienced it. And everything in life, you always could read a book, but there's nothing like having that experience. I've had the experience of working for congressmen, of looking at those egos, of looking at the staffers who are 20-something years old, who believe in something but don't have any real-world experience. I've seen all of this. And that's why I've become really the activist against crony capitalism, because it kind of it groups all my experiences together. And, you know, at its core, you know, how do you define crony capitalism? It's really a system where the government works with industry to create their own markets. And it's a system where there are winners and losers. You know, the winners are the politicians and the companies that support these policies. They're the winners. The losers are the outcast companies the unchosen companies, and the everyday hardworking Americans who have to pay for the consequences of this government big business coordination. It's a system that enriches the already rich and really loots those who are least able to pay. I mean, that's as simple as that. It's bad for taxpayers. It's bad for long-term corporate shareholders. It's bad for liberty. We have reduced choices and a reduced standard of living. And it's bad for free enterprise. It's bad. We've learned, over the years, especially I'd say the last few years, we've learned that we can't trust establishment anymore. And most disappointingly, we can't trust the normal checks and balances on the establishment. If you're talking about a corporation, you can't trust the board of directors to do what they're charged to do. They're not representing shareholder interests too often. They're representing the CEO who's their buddy. It's, scratch each other's back mentality, and the shareholders really aren't represented. So that's an institution that's normal checks and balances have failed, in my view. And we've seen it, in schools, tragically Penn State. Oh my God. You have an institution where the normal checks and balances of the administration fell apart. And we have elected officials who keep promoting bad policies because they get rewarded and they enrich themselves and they keep kicking the problems all the way down the road. So really tragically, if you sum all this up, there's really a moral crisis. We have people who are in power, who are self-dealing, who are selfish, and they're cowards. Confronted with a problem, they will run and hide and do the easy thing rather than what is right. And that's the institutions that I think we're here tonight to try to challenge. That's why both Deneen and I are really excited about, the whole Tea Party movement, because it challenges the political establishment. It shakes it up. The elected officials don't know what to do. And it frightens them, and that's good. We're trying to break up this monopoly of special interests. But we really need to broaden our coalition. And that's why, again, I'm excited, to be here tonight, among people who have perhaps different views on different policy issues. But we need to build a bigger coalition to shake up the establishment. Because whether you're looking at education, whether you're looking at energy, whether you're looking at anything, it's not working. You know what Albert Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, looking for a different result. We need to do things differently. And one of the areas that I'm going to talk about tonight is really energy. Because energy is really the bedrock of crony capitalism. Now with energy, what's happened is big business and government really struck a deal. They're working together to serve their own interests. The way this works is big government will get their huge windfall profits, and the government gets more control. And we, the people, kind of get left out of this deal. The government is really central planning energy policy, and big business is helping them along. And what we're really talking about is electricity. What they've done with electricity, the government has decided that we will use renewable forms of energy, whether you like it or not. Despite the cost and despite the feasibility, you're going to use it. And to meet the government's goals, the businesses get a lot of helping hand from the government. Right? The government gives grants, the government gives subsidies, tax credits. The government guarantees markets, renewable energy mandates. Your utilities, thou shalt generate 25% of your electricity from renewable energy sources, whether you like it or not. That's a false market. And the government, probably most harmful, will eliminate competing energy interests. That's why there's a war on fossil fuels, specifically a war on coal. You see, coal is the competition for cheap electricity. To get renewable energy prices up here, coal's down here. The way you do it is the old Tony Soprano way, is you break the leg of the coal industry. You remove them, and then you're only stuck with higher priced electricity, and that's what's going on today. It's a fixed energy market. Now, one of the real hallmarks in all of this was really surrounds the whole issue of global warming and government regulation designed to reduce emissions of carbon dioxide. Now, we have a fossil fuel-based economy, 85% of our energy comes from fossil fuels. That's carbon-based fuels, whether it's oil, natural gas, or coal. 85% of our economy runs on fossil fuels. The problem with fossil fuels, according to a lot of environmentalists, is that the carbon dioxide, when you burn it, emits carbon dioxide that goes into the atmosphere and warms the earth. That's the theory. The way you deal with this from the government planning side is you make fossil fuels much more expensive, so we use less. Translation: higher utility bills, higher gasoline prices. That's the policy goal. Now, going back in the beginning of the Obama administration, the idea, if you want to reduce something, the easiest way to do it in the old school was you tax it. You tax something, you get less of it, right? Tax gasoline, excise taxes. The problem when you just tax energy is that you're going to upset a lot of companies, a lot of businesses. So what they came up with was an idea called cap and trade. And what cap and trade does is they set an amount, this was the plan, you set a limit of the amount of CO2, carbon dioxide, that can be emitted, that's the cap, and then you can trade with other businesses if you're over the cap. Okay? Cap and trade. What that does is, it sounds free market, but what that does is you bring in a lot of big businesses who want to make money on the trading side of the operation, right? So what happens is you do cap and trade, and remember the whole end part is to raise the price of fossil fuels, and especially coal. See, coal emits twice as much CO2 as, let's say, natural gas. So coal is the issue that they're really focused on. And when President Obama was running for president, it's on YouTube, he basically said, my cap and trade plan would make electricity prices skyrocket, and it will bankrupt coal-fired utilities. That was before he was president. So on the cap and trade, I kind of explained what it is. Now, cap and trade, again, you bring in a bunch of lobbyists when you do cap and trade. So the banks got all excited about cap and trade because what they wanted to do is trade these carbon dioxide credits. If I'm a utility and I'm over my limit, I gotta buy it from Dave who's under. There's a bank in between trading, okay? The carbon trading market was estimated to be larger than the oil trading market, okay? Remember, 85% of our economy runs on fossil fuels. That's a lot of CO2, so there's a lot of trading going on. So that was a big part of it. The other part of this also is you could get an offset, which means if somebody plants a tree in Brazil and your utility over your limit, you can buy a credit from this tree growing, not in Brooklyn, but in Brazil. A little odd, isn't it? But anyway, that's trading. So you actually had businesses who are out there trying to build forests. What happens is the fire. They didn't get that far. Anyway. So that was the cap and trade. Brought in a whole new group of lobbyists. So Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, they're all lobbying for this cap and trade so that they can profit from it. See, that's the beauty of trying to lure big business in. There was also a group of corporations who also lobbied for cap and trade. General Electric, DuPont, locally, lobbied for this cap and trade along with environmentalists because they had a business interest in either selling wind turbines or solar panels. That was their business interest. So what happened in 2009, the Waxman-Markey bill, the cap and trade bill, passed the House of Representatives in 2009. Thank God it died in the Senate. Among the things that cap and trade would have done, or the Waxman-Markey bill, it also would have legislated a renewable energy mandate federally, that I think up to 20% of our electricity would have been generated from renewable energy, which would have given a guaranteed market for General Electric to make solar panels and wind turbines. Also, cap and trade would have been a bubble. It would have been a carbon bubble, carbon dioxide bubble. We talked about bubbles before. Just sit back and think about it. Imagine explaining this to a teenager. The whole idea of the government was they were making carbon dioxide have intrinsic value, something that could trade. But wait a minute, we exhale carbon dioxide. It's all over, it's ubiquitous. There's nothing really unique about it, and its only value comes from because the government said so. Simple as that. Most of the things we trade, whether it be pork bellies or orange juice or gold, it has some sort of value. Carbon dioxide has no value. Its only value would have come by decree. And remember, if you can't trust the banks to deal with mortgage securities, at least the mortgage has property, how could you value and trade something that has no intrinsic value? It's everywhere, it's basically hot air. And yet they were lobbying for all this. This was a huge bubble that thank God we avoided. That's the good news. Cap and trade went nowhere. The bad news is, however, too many industries have bet big money on renewable energy, and they're not going away. So following cap and trade's failure, President Obama said there were other ways to skin the cat, meaning there was another way to get to climate-type legislation, another way to bankrupt coal, and another way to ram renewable energy down all our collective throats. And that's happening through the Environmental Protection Agency. The Environmental Protection Agency has issued 3 or 4 different rules that is literally bankrupting the coal industry. Coal is the loser in this game of picking energy winners and losers. There is going to be 175 coal-fired power plants that are going to be closing. The amount of electricity produced from coal used to be close to 50%, 46%. In less than a year and a half, it's now down to 36%. Coal mining stocks are plummeting, and Patriot Coal went bankrupt. Thousands of coal miners are losing their jobs, and this really hurts some states like West Virginia, whose economy is largely dependent on coal. Electricity prices will skyrocket. There was an auction for future electricity prices in Ohio for an emergency supply of electricity in the future. It went up 8-fold. 8 times, okay? The winners, unfortunately, in this war against coal, this renewable energy mandates, are really a lot of President Obama's political donors and crony capitalist allies. The winners got grants and loans for renewable energy, and we the people are the losers. Speaking of losers, we lost billions of dollars went into renewable energy, and with Solyndra went bankrupt. There was a new study in Nevada, $1.3 billion went into federal funds for renewable energy. It created 288 jobs, about $4.6 million per job. That's your tax dollars going to create jobs, $4.6 million per job. Stimulus money went to huge profitable companies. General Electric got $126 million. Exelon, NextEra, and Duke Energy each got $200 million grant. These companies give yields up to 4 or 5%. So your tax dollars went to the government to give to a corporation who's giving the shareholders 4 or 5%. That's crony capitalism at its worst. States have also become a major player in renewable energy policy. You have these state mandates. You have one right here in Delaware. I think it's a 25% renewable energy mandate. And Caesar Rodney Institute, funded a study. What happens when you have renewable energy? Energy prices go up, disposable income goes down, because more money has to go to pay for electricity bills out of the people's pocket. And as I sum up, crony capitalism is alive and well here in Delaware, because there's a company called Bloom Energy. It uses fuel cells to create electricity. Well, the problem with Bloom Energy is, first of all, it uses natural gas to create the energy. It still emits carbon dioxide. It also emits volatile organic chemicals, other pollutants, and it's not that efficient, and it costs more. So why is all this happening? Well, again, it's cronyism. The venture capital firm Kleiner Perkins is a big investor in Bloom Energy. The partners in Kleiner Perkins so happen to be former Vice President Al Gore and a fellow named John Doerr. Doerr is a billionaire venture capitalist. He's on President Obama's Economic Advisory Board. Kleiner Perkins was also a big investor in Fisker Automotive, you know, the company that was supposed to build the car facility here, the company that still got government grants and contracts. There's all connected. So with Bloom and with John Doerr, what we really have is Delaware citizens are bailing out a billionaire. Think of it. The man's already wealthy, God bless capitalism, but now he's using every individual in Delaware to back his investment in his investments. It's a wealth transfer from hardworking Americans to already people who are gaming the system. It's really a lose-lose situation, because if Bloom is successful, Doerr gets richer, and the citizens of Delaware aren't going to share any of those profits. If it goes down the tubes, Delaware citizens lose, and Doerr's losses are less. You know, venture capitalists should be risky, high risk, high gain, but it shouldn't be something that the citizens get involved with. You know, and as I close, you know, it's what we need is a free market capitalism system absent of government interference, picking winners and losers. And I hope tonight I've shed some light on the dangers, you know, kind of posed by crony capitalism. This isn't a Republican issue, this ain't a Democratic issue. This is an issue of right and wrong. And I would love to work any and all of you to tackle crony capitalism within Delaware or anywhere around the country. God bless you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Say something, Pastor. The 4 years ago, the Caesar Rodney Institute wasn't here. We're here, kind of like the Calvary. We are Dave and Jim, intellectual guys, analyzing, writing white papers, and developing the munitions to give to John and his troops out on the street. However, we have basically come after a couple of years of writing papers and trying to say, can we show you this reality? We don't get very far with that. We've actually sued the governor and every member of the Public Service Commission. Right now, there's a lawsuit, and it was on the front, I don't know if it was the front page, but it made the Wall Street Journal. Because we said basically, there were two people in that lawsuit. One was a citizen in Delaware saying, it's not right that I have to pay this much more money, and those guys down in that different municipality doesn't, for this goofy energy scheme that you cooked up from some guys in California. Now put a metric on it, $500 million. $500 million over 20 years is the extra cost to Delawareans for that scheme. $500 million. You know, we're a little state, okay? That lawsuit exists right now, and it went right, isn't it, Dave? It was the governor and every member of the Public Service Commission. Yet the co-complainant in that lawsuit was a firm that makes fuel cells, and they've been making them for years. They put them in submarines, federal, you know, our Army or Navy, I guess it's the Navy, submarines. They'd like to come down to Delaware and say, we put our fuel cells in cheaper. But the people at Dover said, here's the criteria for doing business in Delaware if you want to put us fuel cells, and they write it so that only one fuel cell company can qualify. Okay? So that this lawsuit it's an unconstitutional action that our governor, his administration, and the Public Service Commission conspired for this blessed company, Crony Capitalism. They're friends of ours, so the state of Delaware will put up a lot of money so you guys can make money, and maybe it'll work out. If it does, it's going to be great for you. We'll pay more expensive electricity. Okay? They had the temerity to say, and if in the future this deal we cut gets undone by a future legislature, like you vote them all out in November, and they say we're not going to do this anymore, it triggers a complete payment of all that money today.